Hi, everyone. I'm Rickie. I'm one of the lead. I'm just going to actually, sorry, hold on. Sorry, is my presentation big enough for everybody? Anna?
Yeah.
You can see my slides, yeah. Cool, okay.
We can see your slides, we cannot see you.
Oh, okay, hold on. There we go. Hi. So yes. Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I've garnered success from product positioning over the last few years. And I suppose it started with me, a little bit like some of you. You know, when you spend hundreds of hours on your product, you're spending a lot of money developing it. Yet, you know, despite all of our best efforts, the competitor somehow just gets all the buzz in the marketplace. So, and, you know, people start to really struggle to stand out. So, you know, you kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit and you think, well, what is it that I need to do here? Do I need to change my pricing? Do I need to develop more features? Do I need more capital? But I guess before you go back to the drawing board, it's always really good to look at product positioning and really reconsider that first. So I'd like to claim all these ideas in the presentation as my own, but I'm afraid it's shameless plagiarism of a lot of books that I've read, a lot of events that I've attended over the years, as well as learning from, you know, some of the best product people in the industry. So, so what we're taught. So traditional positioning really revolves around positive statements. So what is it that we sell? Who is it for? How it works? What are the benefits? But however, as a market gets more crowded and commoditized, negative statements actually become far more valuable. And because media buying now with ad agencies is pretty much a race to the bottom, companies are really having to lean very hard across their messaging into what they are not and what they don't do. And by actively positioning yourselves in the market about who you're not and what you don't do, you actually create a lot of separation from some of your competitors in that market. And you also, you know, carve out that separation as well in your prospects' minds also. So what is product positioning? To put it really, really simply, product positioning is simply about context. Now, for those of you who don't recognize this violinist in this picture, this is Joshua Bell, and he has a career spanning more than 30 years and is one of the world's most celebrated violinists and performers. But here, as you can see, he's nothing more than a street performer. But look what happens when we change the context. He goes from street performer to, you know, pretty much a musical genius here. But, oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. But, oh, sorry, we're just heading. Yeah, but the product here, as you can see, it didn't change. It's the same product, but we changed the context. So let's look at some common mistakes before we kind of go into, you know, how we really position product. And I know that I've certainly made some or all of these mistakes that I'm gonna quickly run quickly through with you. So you aren't considered the preferred brand. If you're watching this and you are the preferred brand in your marketplace, you probably don't need to kind of carry on listening to this, and you could probably go and have a cup of tea. But if you're not, then let's go on. If you recognize any of these devices that you see in this presentation, then congratulations, you guys are as old as I am. But Blackberry used to be the #1 selling smartphone in the world. It was revered and it had customers that span the globe, from celebrities to lawyers to kids, unfortunately also to criminal gangs who loved their impenetrable and non-interceptable encryption technology on their devices. But then what happened? Apple then came into the market and they said, hey, we're going to launch a phone. And they took the market by storm. Now, having worked at Blackberry during this time and many years before the iPhone was actually released, I can tell you that Blackberry was, in terms of feature, that the iPhone was actually technically deficient when you compared it to the Blackberry device. Blackberry was the meat and potatoes of the communications world, and Apple was like this flimsy cotton candy type thing that would blow away in the wind, you know, if there was one strong enough. But one of the issues is that Blackberry, they didn't realize what their strengths were and where their market was until it was really too late. And it became less obvious to their target market and to their existing customers that they were the best choice. And it wasn't clear to their customers that if they went to Apple, what were they going to miss out on? One of the other things is you struggle to express your value. You know, are you confident in your team's ability to really express your value very, very clearly to the marketplace? Do you have a consistent tone of voice? I think HubSpot actually said that brands that consistently present themselves across the market have an average revenue increase of around 23%, which is huge. And if you promote different benefits in your data, you know, in your ads versus your landing pages, or if your brand tone changes from social media to your email communications, or from mobile to web, that inconsistency can actually be really, really costly. After all, if your team isn't on the same page, how do you expect your prospects to know why they should choose you? And for your team to develop this new position, you know, you need a common understanding of the goals and also all of the expected outcomes of your product. Now, while having 100% of your organization aligned at all times really isn't realistic, and I've never worked for a company that has been, you know, completely 100% aligned, but a weak foundation of understanding makes positioning for you as a product team incredibly difficult. If customers don't know what they're getting and managers and your sales teams don't really know what they're selling or promoting, then it's almost impossible for companies to really identify where their competitive position is here. Another common mistake is you try to appeal to everyone. And without targeting a specific audience, you risk blending in with your competition. People really don't start to see kind of where you begin, where they end, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the most common mistakes that brands actually make when crafting messaging for their things like their website, for example, is they try to speak to everyone. It's completely fine to sell to multiple personas and even to multiple markets and in multiple market segments. But you don't need to try and sell to every single persona in every single campaign or on every single website. And if you remember a company called Evernote, some of you might remember them. They were once a really promising note starting app. I loved their solution. And unfortunately, Evernote started to drift really away from its original vision, which was a note-taking app. And they started to create a whole host of other offerings that just didn't stick in the marketplace. They built a chat app, they built a recipe app, they built a contact management app. And it even sold like business gear in a really ambitious kind of e-commerce venture as well. And with their attention so scattered over, you know, multiple messaging, multiple brand, you know, just, it was an absolute mess. What they found was actually new note-taking apps like Bear and also there was one other, Notion. They really quickly stepped in to serve those customers that Evernote felt, you know, sorry, their customers felt that Evernote weren't really delivering a solution anymore. One of the other common mistakes is, you know, you think you're the sole source of a product. You think that you have the only solution in the marketplace. And again, you know, customers now have control, complete control over where they choose to spend their money. And you must adapt really quickly to that. Social media and digital channels have given customers a way to really start to connect with each other as customers, but also gather data from sources that weren't typically available to them before. And they're now starting to form opinions about brands and are increasingly starting to become skeptical about messages coming directly from companies and brands. So how are you engaging with your current customers and also your prospects? How often do you interact with them? What other sources are they using to learn and form opinions about your company and your products? If you're messaging prospects and customers only when you're trying to sell to them, it's really obvious to the customer and they get turned off really, really quickly when you guys do that. So add value with things like high quality content and engage with comments, questions, and also concerns across multiple channels, including social media. One of the big problems, and I've been guilty of this before in the past as well, is you're selling products on your brand values or purpose. I mean, patently, the whole concept of brand purpose to me as a product manager, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people who disagree with me, is just moronic, right? I don't want Starbucks telling me about race relations and world peace. I want it to serve me a really good cup of coffee in a really pleasant location. Positioning is an active, evolving process that requires constant refinement. If you're not regularly adjusting your strategy and experimenting with how you market and sell, you'll struggle to position yourself effectively, even if historically you felt you've always been pretty well positioned. How long, for example, does it take you guys to adjust your messaging? If you can make minor changes in days rather than waiting for your next quarterly or yearly strategy meeting, then your positioning should and can change whenever you want it to and whenever you feel the need to. So these are really the symptoms of poor positioning. So we're going to understand a little bit about how can we effectively, put that product positioning into process. And improving your positioning isn't straightforward as just, coming up with a title for a blog post. But that doesn't mean there aren't some really nice concrete steps to work on it. So let's just look at a few examples of how we can actually position properly. The first thing I always say is tell a story, right? If Dove, a bar of soap, can find an amazing way to tell a story of real beauty, there is literally, I don't believe, not a brand in the world that can't find their interestingness or their sort of inner meaning and figure out how to tell their story. And when you craft a compelling story, you help change the conversation from comparing features and benefits to communicating the end result that your product provides. So while features and benefits are important, of course they're important, particularly in the building your product process, they're easy to replicate and they don't often say anything compelling. And many times, and this might be news to some of you, the customer doesn't actually care. So DocSend is an example here. They overhauled their product strategy and they completely moved away from feature and benefit selling to storytelling. And they saw a significant increase in their conversion. Identify and learn from your best customers. Instead of spending hours in meetings, nose deep in spreadsheets, looking at analytics, looking at stats, reach out to your best customers and find out why they chose you. While it might be tempting to survey everyone, your top customers often provide you with the key data. So focus on them first. Which customers were quick to adopt your product and services? Which consistently refer your business? Customer interviews are a really good place to find out those answers, and don't be afraid of them. Your top customers, and certainly my top customers as well, have provided me with insights into how they see my competition. And most of the time, it's drastically different from how I see my competition. And let go of your existing baggage. If you've always thought of your product in one way, at competing in a particular market or solving a particular problem, it's hard to see it in any other way. The reality is that most products can be lots of things to different types of buyers. So what does your product do best? Is it simple? Is it easy to use? Is the support you offer world class? Internally, you might have the answers to all of these questions, but does your branding and messaging really communicate that to your target audience? Revolut, which is what we call a disruptive finance brand in the UK, they offered to simplify banking. They took a mobile-first approach, which appealed to their target audience at the time, which was young professionals, and they leveraged the common frustrations of traditional banking, and they communicated their difference in a story by clearly telling you what they were not. And it's, you know, really reaped dividends for them, and they're growing at a massive rate. Finally, communicate a really simple promise. What can you promise customers if they invest in your product? How can you communicate that in the simplest terms? A great example is Gecko's 15 minutes could save you 15% on your car insurance. In a single sentence, they have set expectations, and then they also promise value. And finally, make positioning a team effort. Positioning for products really works best when it comes ideally from different parts of your organization across different functional teams. Each team, from sales to marketing to customer success, you know, can bring a really unique, different viewpoint to how customers perceive and also experience your products. Including all these teams in the positioning process really ensures that, firstly, that everyone is on the same page. And we've talked about some of the challenges of that, with everyone being on the same page can really hinder. But it also helps you unlock insights that may not always reach across departments. For example, you know, maybe your customer service team have noticed that 15% of churn or cancellations result in a frustration with a particular feature that isn't explained very well during the sales process. So your positioning affects multiple departments, and every single leader of those departments should have a seat at your product table. And you'll need company-wide buy-in really to reap some of those benefits. The other thing you can do is change the conversation. It's tempting to really compare yourself with the competition. And we've all seen those competitive comparison spreadsheets with the little ticks going all the way across it. But the most effective positioning really changes the conversation entirely. And there is perhaps nobody that embodies this better than Supply. And they basically sell razor blades for 5 to 7 times the cost of a single razor blade. And their kind of way that they come into the market, the way that they position themselves, the stories that they tell is absolutely incredible. And this is really where strong positioning can help make customers feel like you're the way of the future, and that choosing anyone else would be a mistake. And then determine who cares. Okay, so once you have a good understanding of your product, what it's delivering versus other alternatives, you can then start to look at audiences that care a lot about value. But remember, even if you have some unique attributes, not all customers will feel the same way. And then finally is find a market frame of reference for you. And there's a lot of, there are a lot of things, but I'm just going to really talk very, very quickly because I can see we only got a couple of minutes left on 3 things here. So head to head. So head to head is really where you are aiming to be the leader in a market category that already exists in the minds of customers. So there's an established market leader, and your goal is to beat them at their own game by convincing customers that you are better at delivering the solution. If you choose this way of taking your product to market, then you should be prepared to do battle against multiple competitors in this space who will be simultaneously trying to prove that they are better than you. The next one is big fish, smaller pond. If you're not able to compete directly with a market leader in the segment that you want to compete in, there's still a way for you to get a foothold in that market. And many startups actually use this method. And they do so successfully by simply just breaking up the market into very smaller, manageable chunks. In product, we call this subsegmentation. So you get all the advantages of a well-defined market category without some of the stiff competition. A lot of companies do, particularly those who are a little bit more established, they do shy away from this approach because they're worried that moving from targeting the entire market to then just carving out a small subsegment for themselves will mean less opportunity. But actually, in my experience, it's completely the opposite. You're simply unselecting those parts of the market that were never going to buy from you anyway. And and it helps you focus on the customers who will see a clear advantage with your product. And finally, the last sort of element is change the game. And sometimes new technology or circumstances pave the way for an entirely new market. Before you enter this strategy, though, you should probably have exhausted all other options. And because this style of positioning is very, very difficult. It can work well if your company is large and powerful and they already capture the attention of customers, media, analysts, for example. But you aren't simply capturing demand that's already here using this process. Is you have to really create that demand. You have to spark that interest first.